Today on the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast, we have a special guest. Her name is Jennifer Zeng. She is originally from China. She was held in prison camps. She has a story that's going to blow your mind and warnings that every American needs to hear. So get ready, because it's all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. Well, we're going to do an interview here. This interview is going to last probably about an hour and a half. It's going to be one of the more interesting interviews you've heard about the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. We're going to talk everything about real estate, trade deals, Russia, Taiwan, education. Did you know that the Chinese are not only buying up land, but now they're buying up schools here in the United States of America? You're going to hear about how it is that they have prison camps, they have labor camps, and this woman was in one. And I am telling you, what Jennifer Zeng is going to tell you today, if you ignore this, well, it's like ignoring a speeding train while you're standing on the tracks. So without further ado, I bring in Jennifer Zeng. But before that, let me just say that the buy one, get one free at dmlcbd.com ends this Sunday. Sunday is the last day. So if you have not gotten into dmlcbd.com and gotten your buy one, get one free on all the products on our site, now's the time to do it if you're an existing customer. And if you haven't done it, if you've got anxiety, sleep problems, your immune system isn't boosting like it should be, if you've got skin issues, you got aches and pains, you could join the tens of thousands of people who have had their lives changed for the better at DMLCBD. Our products are the Ferraris, and everybody else is a Kia. But we sell our products at Kia prices because I just adore all of you. So without further ado, I bring into you now Jennifer Zeng. So Jennifer, I appreciate you being on with me. I follow you on X. And there was a post that you made that jumped out at me about how it is that the CCP, or at least those people connected to the CCP, had bought a school in, I think it was New Hampshire. And I want to get into that in a second. But just to line you up in terms of, so this way people understand the life that you have led to this point, tell people, I mean, you grew up in China, and then you were imprisoned, and explain why that was.
Yes, I was imprisoned because I practiced a sort of meditation, Tai Chi or yoga type of meditation practice called Falun Gong. It was an ancient practice based on ancient Chinese wisdom and the three principles to follow in your daily life: truth, compassion, tolerance, or forbearance, and the 5 sets of gentle exercises to do to improve your health and your mental health, your well-being as a whole. So because of the health benefit was very obvious, so only 7 years since its first introduction to the public in China in 1992, the CCP did a secret survey, and they found that there were more Falun Gong practitioners in China than the CCP members in 1999. They estimated there were 70 to 100 million Falun Gong practitioners in China. And at that time, there were only 60 million CCP members. So they figured this is a great threat. So they decided to crack down on it. That's why I ended up in prison.
So yeah, I want to understand that. Because I meditate every morning. It's a major part of my day. I mean, my meditation is I go outside of my balcony. Everything is quiet. I just focus in on good thoughts. Yes. And I do deep breathing. You were imprisoned for doing that? I mean, was your meditation the same as what I just described?
I think for any outsider, it's pretty much the same. But for the CCP, it's not the same. I'm still doing it every day here in the United States, no problem. And the people from, I think, over 100 countries in different corners of the world are doing it, no problem. Only even in Hong Kong and Taiwan and Macau, you can do it. Only in mainland China, that's a crime because the sheer number of people. If you are doing something together and you have so many people, that's a huge worry to the CCP because their biggest fear is their own legitimacy. They are afraid if someone inside this practice, because you've already got so many people, if somebody inside this group stands up and say, let's get rid of the CCP, and then 100 million people could follow. So that's a big issue for them. No other issue.
I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's also mind control. I mean, they want to have control of your mind. And
Yes.
you know, somebody who meditates, and I mean, I know this because I've been in the news business for so long, Jennifer, that what happens is that you're always talking about negative things. And so that negativity plays a role in getting you sick, right? There's a thought. If negativity creates stress, stress creates inflammation, inflammation kills. So if your ugly, bad thoughts are making you sick, can good thoughts make you well? And the answer to that I found is yes, without question. And so they are so concerned that their people are going to be healthy, not only in body, but in mind, and that you would be able to wake up to the point of what they're doing to the Chinese people is terrible, and they don't want you uprising. So if I'm not mistaken, did they throw you in a labor camp?
Yes, they did. They arrested me 4 times before they threw me into a labor camp. And we were told the only purpose, like you said, thought control. So the only purpose for us to be sent there is to get us reformed or converted or to denounce Falun Gong. So change our thoughts about Falun Gong. If we are now believing Falun Gong is good, truth, compassion, forbearance is good, meditation is good for your health. They want us to change into believing truth, compassion, and forbearance are banned. Falun Gong is banned. Meditation is not going to help your health. So the only purpose is to change our thoughts, change our faith in Falun Gong.
How long were you in that labor camp for?
1 year.
If you could, without going too long, but don't leave out any of the juicy stuff, Jennifer, can you describe what a labor camp is like for, and how old were you at the time? Actually, let me change it. How old were you when you were put into that camp? And describe to people the worst parts of that camp.
I was 33 then.
Okay.
And I was only 2 years into the practice. And that camp, to use one sentence to describe it, is living hell on earth. Every day it's endless torture, endless brainwashing, and an endless slave labor. And another thing is wait to be killed for our organs if our blood type matches somebody who need a live organ in the camp. So that's basically the 3 parts and another, plus purpose for us to be there. So every day, as soon as we open our eyes, it's either endless torture, endless brainwashing, or endless labor. So at one stage, I was dragged by 2 police officers into the courtyard, and they applied 2 electric batons on me until I lost consciousness. So as long as you don't denounce your belief, the torture will never end. So from October 2000, they started a new method, that is sleep deprivation. As soon as you were there, they will not allow you to sleep until you collapse. So the longest period I knew of when I was in the labor camp was a lady wasn't given any sleep for 13 days, 13 nights. And I personally witnessed a moment of female Falun Gong practitioners was driven into insanity because of the lack of sleep. She was not given to sleep for 4 nights, 5 days, and plus they tortured her endlessly. And at 1 minute, she suddenly went mad. She cried or she laughed like mad. And since then, she lost her sanity. She no longer knew who she was. That's so sad. So that's totally inhuman. The first day I was there, the first sound I heard is the crack of the electric baton, and the first order I got is squat. On the first day, we were forced to squat under the scorching sun like this, with our hand on the back of our head and with our head looking down at our feet. We were never ever allowed to raise our head and look at the police officer in their eyes. Even if we were talking to the police officer, we still need to lower our head and look at our feet. So the first day is like 15 or 16 hours continuously squatting with our hand like this under the scorching sun. So my first thought was, I couldn't believe this was still happening in the 21st century. I felt I was thrown back into the compensation camp by a time machine into a Nazi concentration camp. I only read about it and hear about it or watch in a movie about the concentration camp. And I couldn't believe I was in one myself. And the labor camp I was in is only maybe some 20 kilometers away from 10 or 20 miles away from Tiananmen Square, where there are so many big events happening, and they claim that is the heart of New China. But every day we were tortured to death.
What about
in
so
that
when you
place.
when you talk about torture, obviously the mental torture you just described with that one female, and obviously making you keep your head down in the boiling sun for 15 to 16 hours. Listening to you say that, it almost, like, I'm trying to envision it myself having to do it. I almost think it's humanly impossible to do. So just imagining that for 16 minutes, let alone 16 hours, is sort of sickening. When it comes to food, what kind of food were you given on a daily basis for that year?
Just some, I think, very, very basic food to keep you survive. And the food is also used as a tool to break your will. So if you don't reform, you are given very, very little and basic food. And if after you are reformed, you were given maybe a little bit better food. And what surprised me or leave me a big impression on me was how fake everything was in the labor camp. Like in ordinary time, we were given very, very nasty bad food, but one day suddenly there was somebody come to inspect the labor camp, and that day we were given so much meat that we couldn't even finish it. And the labor camp, they discipline us like army people. So we were not allowed to leave any food unfinished, and we were only given 5 minutes to finish our food. But that day, because of the inspection, we were given so much, we couldn't finish. We were always want to throw up, and we wish how we could how wonderful if it would be if they given us a little, and on other normal days every day we were given a normal amount of time every day. But no, nothing in usual days, but on that inspection day there were a huge bowl of meat for us to finish in 5 minutes. We want to throw up because we couldn't finish.
So I mean, I want to comment on the food there, and then I'm going to tell you right off the bat, give you a second to think about it. I mean, I'm a little confused on the inspection thing. We'll get that to a moment. But when it's anybody who's ever dieted before for a period of time, or if you've fasted, fasting is a big thing now. It's something I know a lot about, and when you're not eating a lot of food, your stomach shrinks. And now all of a sudden, when you're trying to jam um, things like steak, which isn't necessarily the easiest thing to digest to begin with, it's almost has a reverse effect to where it's going to make you more sick than it would be nourished. So, with that in mind, what confuses me is that when you talk about things like inspections, that leads somebody to think that there's a higher up that wants to make sure that you're being treated fairly in a prison system. But I can't imagine who that would be, because isn't it the leadership of the CCP that is putting you in that place? So who is conducting the inspections and why?
There are two kinds of inspection. Maybe I didn't use the correct word. Another kind is like other labor camp want to learn from this labor camp. What do you call that? They come to visit, let's say, to pay a visit and to get some experience, because like I said, to so-called reform Falun Gong practitioners is the biggest task there. And it is very hard, because after we experienced Falun Gong for 2 years, like somebody maybe for longer, we knew it is good. So it is very hard for us to admit it is not good. And since this labor camp, they adopted some, like I said, that cruel method to sleep deprivation to drive you into insanity. And after that lady lost her sanity, she would say whatever you want her to say about Falun Gong. So other labor camp came here to visit, to learn some experience. So because in theory they should treat us well, they should not torture us. We should guarantee like sleep time, rest time, or whatever. They do have a set of rules or regulations. So to put on a facade for other like fellow officers to say, yes, they do have a system like higher, maybe a bureau level where inspect a lower level to make sure everything makes good. Of course, the order comes from a highest level of CCP to crack down on Falun Gong, right? But because the system is still there, they were put on. They are still running. I think around the system, but gradually, the police officer get to understand. For like normal prisoners, there are regulations you need to follow. You should not torture them, but Falun Gong practitioners are exceptions. Even if you torture them to death because they are political prisoners, you are not held responsible. On the other hand, if you don't or can't reach your so-called reform rate ratio, they are required to form 95% of Falun Gong practitioners. If you can't reach that quota, you will be given a demotion, or you will you will get fired, or you will get fined. You will not paid any salary. So little by little, gradually, they came to understand Falun Gong practitioners are exceptions. You can torture them to death, no problem. But if you can't torture them so badly to make them reform, you are in big trouble. So later on, the police even transfer the responsibility to other criminals in the labor camp for them to torture us, to help the police to get us reform. If they help the police, they do a good job, they can be released ahead of time. That's their reward. If they can't, they also got punished. So other prisoners really hated us if we refuse to reform, because we get them into trouble in their eyes.
I could understand that completely. So then I'm going to punch a lot into this next question / statement. You're in there for a year. You are a smart person. You understand how to meditate. And one of the keys to meditation is to be able to block out all sound, all distractions, to get total control of your mind. And, on a much simpler basis, I mean, where I meditate every morning out on my balcony, if I get out there too late in the morning, like let's say 8 a.m., the distractions are many because by then the landscapers are starting, the construction is starting, right? So it is very, very difficult to close out those sounds. And if I don't close out those sounds, it is literally impossible to meditate. It's just so hard. And there are days when I just say, the hell with it. I got to get up earlier. I can imagine how somebody who is as strong as mind as you are, especially if you are 2 years into the practice, you must have tried to close out those sounds and horrors. But the more that they do to you, in the same way as the more that the construction makes greater sounds, right? There's a difference between a lawnmower going and then a jackhammer going. The jackhammer just, I throw my hands up in the air. Thinking about what you had to go through, at some point, I assume you had to break, if not to the point of where that other woman went mentally insane, but to where you figure out your only way for survival is that you've got to at least fake it to the point of where everybody in your camp, including your fellow inmates, the prison guards, and then anybody else doing an inspection, believes now that Jennifer is completely 100% reformed. So answer me this, 2 questions. Number one, at what point in time in your life in that prison did you say to yourself, I'm assuming you did, you haven't said it, but I have to assume you did, I'm going to die. I'm never going to make it out of here. And therefore, I must at least put this fake facade on. How long did it take you to get there? And how hard was it to sustain that sort of thought process and be able to fake it in such a way to where they finally said, okay, Jennifer's been reformed, let her leave?
I'm glad you asked this question. It took me the length of a book to talk about the practice. So I do hope everyone can go get a copy of my memoir called Witnessing History, One Woman's Fight for Freedom and Falun Gong. That is a very good question and also the most difficult one to answer. So to make it simple, I tried to hold up and withstood the torture for 6 months until October in 2000. I think one day, suddenly, I didn't I wasn't driven into insanity like the other women. I was very, very close, very, very close for 1,000 times. Sometimes I already feel a huge fear that I feel my free will was going to disperse into the thin air. And I could anticipate if that happens, I will be like her. So there are so many moments I feel at the next second, my will gone and my sanity will gone. I was terrified so much, and I tried with all my willpower to drag my sanity back so that I can still hold myself together. I can still exist as a whole piece, like my whole free will and sanity is still with my physical body. There were many times I think I was very, very close to getting into that same status. And then I think after 6 months, I still remember very clearly. It was in, October 1st is China's so-called National Day. There was a huge holiday. So in those huge, a long holiday of a week or something. So in that week of holiday, because a lot of police officers were on holiday, so they actually reduced the torture amount on us. So we were like given a sudden break. Before that, every day I was trying to hold up myself, right, to withstand all this torture and pressure. And then suddenly, in those few days, some of the pressure went away because there were not as many police officers. And in that kind of, you can say, different status of existing, a very vague idea or mind suddenly came to my mind. Why don't you try to get up or get out and write a book about what you saw and experienced and expose this to the entire world? If you stay here, it's a waste of time. And you have the ability to do this, you can write a book. And because there were so many other, like they even arrest illiterate farmers to the labor camp. And I had the highest education then in the labor camp. I'm a Master of Science from the top university in China, Peking University. So suddenly, this thought became so strong that I want to get out of here to write this book. But of course, I was immediately faced with a dilemma. If I don't reform, if I don't denounce Falun Gong, I will never be released. But if I do, I never in 1 minute want to denounce Falun Gong. So what can I do? So the dilemma and the struggle within myself almost killed me another 1,000 times.
Mm.
And I couldn't discuss this thing with anybody because, of course, I couldn't let anybody know what's on my mind. So anyway, I struggled with my own conscience and the unwillingness to betray my own faith, which I cherished more than my life. And also after 2 years of embody yourself with truth, compassion, and forbearance, telling a little lie is just like kill my life, kill myself. But I finally forced myself somehow to write a statement to promise I would not practice Falun Gong. And so that I can be released to write this book. And I thought that would be enough, but I was very wrong. Later on, I found they set up very high standard, like you said, to recognize you are 100% reformed. So not only you need to write a guarantee statement to say you will not practice Falun Gong, you are required to write long essays to criticize Falun Gong. And then you are required to read out aloud your long essays on stage and in front of all the inmates and the police officer in the labor camp, 1,000 of them at least, and got that process videotaped so that you cannot go back to the wards. You had to hand in your Falun Gong materials, books, and finally, you have to help the police to reform your fellow Falun Gong practitioners who have not been reformed yet. Imagine, with the same mind, how could you conduct all this? So every day it felt worse than all the physical torture I experienced before. I couldn't betray my mind to anybody. I wanted to convince the police that I have been reformed, but at the same time, I didn't do what they want me to do. So that process, it's so hard. So I always pray that no other human being will ever be subjected to what I and a lot of my fellow Falun Gong practitioners have been subjected to, this not only physical, this mental and spirit torture and this process. I think never in human history had any regime do anything so evil to their own citizens. Like for some, like the Nazis, they kill Jews, but they just kill them physically. We were not only killed physically so that our organs can be sold, but our minds, our spirit, our soul were ripped again and again and taken away all the human dignity. You were forced to say things you don't want to say. You were forced to say those humiliating things, and you were forced to do all these things you don't want to do for 1 minute. So you have to betray your own faith. So that kind of torture and process, I think, is beyond what humans should suffer. So there is never such as evil a regime as the CCP. That is for sure. So I do hope everyone can really get a book of get a copy of my book and knew what I really went through to be able to get out so that I can tell my story.
I mean, Jennifer, I'm welling up over here. I didn't, to be quite honest, I didn't expect this in the conversation. I thought that, it would be 5 minutes of introducing you and then 55 minutes of talking about, what's going on today. And I just got to let you keep speaking because the story is incredible. And I think that, I can tell you for one, I will be buying your book when this is over. To be quite honest with you, it's hard to get me tongue-tied. I'm a little tongue-tied right now. There are a lot of questions I want to ask you. And as a gentleman, I just can't and I won't. I'll let my imagination take control of that, because anybody who is capable of doing what it is that they did to you and to other people, you're strong-willed. You had incredible faith and highly educated. So I could only imagine what other people had to go through as well who aren't as mentally strong as you. And I could probably sit here for 5 hours and hear more about this camp and the time that you were there. But for the sake of time, let's skip ahead to the day to where they say to you, we're going to let you go. What did that feel like?
Actually, before they said that, the last test I was given is to watch over only 20-year young girl who was sent to the labor camp for the first day. So as usual, she was not allowed to sleep. So I was tasked. I was given the task of watching over her to make sure she didn't sleep. So both she and I didn't sleep for the whole night. And on the next day, they would release me because I passed the last test. So in the morning, we were given drills like army, like soldiers in the morning. When I was walking beside her, I knew I was going to be released. But I didn't feel any joy or happiness in my heart because I knew what were going to happen to her. That was only her first night. And I knew what would going to happen to all the other fellow Falun Gong practitioners. If they were still suffering there, for what the point of me being released? That's what on the mind. On the day of my release, I didn't feel any happiness or relief. I felt so heavy in my heart, knowing what would happen to this girl after I was released. That's how I felt on the morning of my release.
It's amazing because when you started telling me about the 20-year-old, immediately all I thought to myself was that there had to be the struggle within you to leave knowing what she was going to endure. I just, Jennifer, I mean, no disrespect to your homeland. I mean, no disrespect to your people when I say the following to you. But I've been in this news business for 20 years, and I have covered pretty much just about everything. I've seen, you know this, you've been here long enough. I mean, when people look at the border and they see the illegal immigration that goes on, people get very, very angry at the illegal aliens who come in here. And I can understand why many of them come, because they're looking for a better life. They're trying to escape the sort of situation that you described, maybe not as horrible. But when they come here to the United States of America, what a lot of people don't understand, especially for the young girls, is that they are put into drop houses here in the United States on U.S. property. And these girls are kept in these drop houses, and the cartels who operate these homes, they will ask the girl, what is the phone number to your father, who may be back in Guatemala or Brazil or wherever it is that he is. And they will call the father, and they will listen. They will make that father listen as that girl is beaten and raped. And now with newer technology where there's FaceTime, the visuals will actually be given. And that father is told if he does not wire transfer $5,000 until that $5,000 is sent, this is going to continue to happen to his daughter each and every day by every single one of the cartel members who are inside that drop house. And when you hear that sort of story, it's horrible to begin with. But when you get the gritty details from the officers, big, tough, rough, tough American guys, muscles bursting out of their shirts, and they tell the story, and they've got tears because they're the ones who eventually sometimes get in there and save these girls, and they're so beat up and they're so destroyed, their lives will never be back to the way that they were before they decided to come to the United States. And I get so freaking pissed off that this sort of thing is happening in my country. So pissed off. And, I've thought over the course of time, why do we open our arms up to, inviting labor to come into this country? We really don't need it. And when I've extrapolated on that, I always find myself going back to China, because I think China is the number one danger to the United States of America. I mean, we've got Russia, you've got Iran, you've got North Korea, you've got a lot of bad actors, you've got the cartels in Mexico. But if somebody said to me, who's the number one foe, I would handedly say China. And I always say, why do we need China? We don't need them. We don't need them for manufacturing. We don't need them for medicines. We don't need them for military apparatus. And yet we continue to do things with China when we know, A, that they're trying to do the worst things in the world to us, and two, if you think those camps that are bad right now with the girl in Arizona who's having her father watch this, do you have any idea what Chinese people have to go through the CCP? And if they're willing to do that to their own people, if we continue down this path and the CCP, take over this country, and that's what they want, that is what they ultimately want, think about what they're going to do to us. That has always been my contention. And what winds up happening is that people can't see it because, in America, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, in America, if I go up right now to a Starbucks, in fact, no, let me change it. Yesterday, Jennifer, we took my daughter to go see a college. And so we drove in and did something I never do, is get fast food, because we were driving home. And there was two lines at the Chick-fil-A. and I got caught in the line where it was going a little slower than the other one. And I wound up maneuvering my car, and I'm driving my car around. So I get out of the slow lane and get in the fast lane because I want to move. I mean, and I thought to myself, oh my God, Dennis, you are doing what you talk about on your podcast. We are such an impatient people. If we don't get our latte, if we don't get our order within 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we're freaking the hell out. And this is why we ultimately lose to China, because the Chinese, the CCP, their job internally is to take over the United States of America, to take over the world, and they will wait for as long as it takes. And I don't think people understand that. And so I come to you and I ask you, and we'll get down into things like education and all this other different stuff, but from a very high level, Jennifer, explain to the people who are listening and watching this about the mentality of the CCP when compared to that of the US citizen, as I just described it. Take it to the next level and explain to people what we're up against in terms of a foe in the CCP.
Yes, in terms of patience, I must say the CCP has planned for decades to take over the USA, to take over the world. So they have patience. So they will start decades ago to start, take one example, to infiltrate the US politicians. They will start decades ago. They will cultivate maybe dozens of candidates who they think could have potential to become the next president or the political star or whatever. They will use decades to cultivate the relationship, or even they actually, I just interviewed a Chinese dissident, and he told me he heard a high secret plan that the CCP actually started maybe 20 years ago to start to cultivate their own presidential candidate for the US. So I also heard the same similar story from another Chinese lady. She also heard a project of they want to run a chain of schools in the United States so that they can cultivate their own people, cultivate the CCP style diplomats, politicians, and even the next US president. So they were not in a hurry. They used decades, and they did very well, good and thorough study of the US society and where are the loopholes and what kind of loopholes they can take advantage of to achieve their goals. So the infiltration is so deep and so comprehensive, like everywhere. They have already infiltrated to the point of very close to achieve their goal, yet a lot of Americans still have no idea how dangerous the situation already is. So yes, they took decades to plan and to carry out their ultimate plan, and they are very steady. They are doing it from all sorts of different angles. And before you know, one day when they think they are ready, they start to attack. You even don't know where you get brought down. Like very recently, right? We just I think found like a same car farm in New York, in New Jersey. 300,000 same car. If they operate together, they are very capable of overwhelm the entire system in the United States. So you even don't know what they are capable of, and they're already there. If we had not found it, and we found these two or three, how many others are there? You never dream about this kind of thing, but it's already happening. It's already here in our doorstep.
One of the things that, my big thing, Jennifer, has been immigration. So I've been in this for 20 years, but immigration has always been my bailiwick. And one thing that happens that I don't think, I bet you if I lined up 100 Americans 99 wouldn't know about this, maybe even 100. But there are birthing hotels, specifically in California, where the Chinese will fly in a pregnant woman who's not far from giving birth. She'll come here. We give her the visa to do it, or they'll come in here illegally, and they give birth at a hotel. And now, of course, through the 14th Amendment, that child is now a U.S. citizen. The mother will take the child home, and that child will be raised under the thoughts and rules of the CCP, only to then return to the U.S. as an adult and then petition through chain migration, petition for that entire family to come over. Now, the reason why this is very significant, and I explain to people who listen to me that at some point in our lifetime, in your time and my time, I truly believe it will happen. Maybe it won't, but definitely in our children's time, that one of those Chinese Americans, if you will wind up running for president of the United States. And they'll be able to do it because they are U.S. born, even though they were raised back in China and they have all the beliefs of the CCP. This is definitely going to happen. Now, I have been preaching this for years. And it was amazing because just here in Florida in the last election, there was a young man who was falsely positioning himself as pro-Trump MAGA. And it turned out to be that this young man had a whole slew of grocery stores. And he had a lot of money. And he was very young to have that lot of money, have all that money. And when the investigation into his funding came, it turned out to be that it showed that there was a lot of connected CCP investment, and that was exposed. And thankfully, he didn't win, but it let me see that the process has now started. It has started, and the CCP will do everything to the point of even what they did to you. Brainwash you, or try to anyway, into thinking that what your religious beliefs were no good and that you had to denounce them and do everything else. So they're going to have those kids for 18 years, 19 years, 20 years, and they're going to send them over back to the United States of America and say, you're going to fake this. You're going to fake that you're pro-Trump. Don't say you're a Democrat. Say you're pro-Trump, definitely in Florida, and people will, people will vote for you. That is the long-term plan. Now they've taken it even a step further, and this is what brought attention for me to your X account, was that I had saw that they had purchased, the CCP had purchased a school in New Hampshire, and that the photographs that they're sort of showing on the outside to throw a curveball to everybody, including the media, was this diversity sort of picture, a little Latino, little white, little black, little Chinese, little this, little that. But really, internally, it's not all that. Can you explain to us about what is happening with this New Hampshire school, and if there are other schools like it in the United States where the CCP is actually taking it over more than, let me add something else into before you go too, because I don't want to forget this. The Chinese, along with with a lot of the Islamic countries in the Middle East, are doing the same thing. Qatar, we just did this on the show on Monday. They're making incredible investments in universities vis-a-vis donations, and then dictating, because it's so much money, dictating to those colleges what they can and cannot teach. And so you will not teach any negative things about China or the CCP. You will not teach anything that's negative about Islam in terms of Qatar or something like that through their donations. So the Chinese, from what I can see, have said, all right, let's infiltrate the universities by our money. And now they're actually saying, why don't we just own the school? So give us a mapping there.
Yes, this particularly school was previously Chester, I think, College in New Hampshire. It was a private school, and I think it went out of business for whatever reason in 2014. And then next year, a company from China called Jiahui Education bought the school, plus with its land, I think it's 7 72 acres of land. But
lot of
in
land.
in Jiahui's website, they claimed they actually had 420 acres of land to set up. They call it Buche College. Like you said, they said we're an international college that is open for multicultural background student. So this is definitely an education institution for pre-college students from maybe like for grade 1 to grade 12. But if you check the background of Jiahui Education, which bought this school, you will be really shocked and surprised. The president or chairman of this group is called Wang Guangfa. One is a Communist Party member. Two, he is, I think, honorable director of a foundation that focus on Marxismist research. So he specialized in Marxism research. And three, he had a very, very deep tie with the army, with the armed police. So he was the model for supporting the army, and he donated 1 million yuan to the armed police every year in Beijing to a certain, I think, the number 4 brigade of team of the Beijing Armed Force, and he set up a cooperation relationship with Dalian military sub-district to have the military actually set up a national defense education base inside their school system. They are also a group in China. They own a lot of schools in China. And I found a 9-minute video, promotion video of this group, not this group, their parent group called Fa Zheng Group. 9 minutes to boasting that this President Wang Guangfa had received by CCP leader Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping and Wen Jiabao, and how has such a deep relationship. He's a model for support the army, and he portrayed himself as following the CCP's Belt and Road route. So his ambition is to set up a school all over the countries that has Belt and Road project. So watching that 9 minutes program, you will see he is as ambitious as Xi Jinping to take over the entire world. And that kind of group, that kind of man is allowed to operate a huge education institution in America, and already for over 10 years. That really, really surprised me. And like you said, I searched for similar cases. I found that Chinese capitals, Chinese money, Chinese groups have been buying all over the world, in not only in the United States, but in UK, in a lot of Asian countries, in Canada. So they are buying schools all over the country. Like I said, they want to educate their own candidates. When they are a very young age, they cultivate them, they train them. It's maybe more, I think, realistic for them to achieve their goal of have their own president. Of course, I heard another also real story. The CCP have a budget of 5 million to bribe any federal politician, like federal congressperson. If you can spend as much as 5 million to bribe one to give him pro-CCP. They have the budget. But of course, if you want a president of your own, it's better off you cultivate from when they are kids. So that's situation is so terrifying that they have started 10 years ago, maybe 20, maybe more than 10 years ago. They've already had some other schools, so they've doing this for decades, and it's just as close as New Hampshire, maybe only 3 hours from New York, and I didn't know nothing about it before I found out this.
The plan, as far as I'm concerned, Jennifer, yeah, if you're going to take over a country from within, and that's
Yes.
what the Chinese are doing, and they're doing it, I want to say they're doing it brilliantly, but I don't know if I want to give them that much credit, because I don't know if it's as much as they are brilliant as we are asleep at the wheel. I think Americans have become so caught up in who's winning Dancing with the Stars, who's going to be in the Super Bowl, what am I going to wear for Halloween? We've gotten so caught up in the luxuries and the nuances of American life that we forget quite often about what it takes to sustain and protect that sort of thing. And so I think it is a combination of a country at sleep and a country who is hungry. And I talk about that hunger being that of the CCP. And so if you're going to take it over from within, you do it in multiple different ways. Education, as we just talked about. And the other thing you do too is that you ensure that when the Dennis Michael Lynches and the Donald Trumps are through the process of life, that next generation coming up isn't going to be as much in love with their country as the last generation was. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to try to water down patriotism. We're going to do that at the school level. And what we're going to do is we're also going to water down these people in terms of how brilliant they could be, because we're going to destroy their brain, meaning we are going to force fentanyl and drugs into that country, and we are going to keep on poisoning these people. And we're going to create it to where we've got a bunch of zombies walking around. And so therefore we've got less of the Dennis Lynches and Donald Trumps than we would have to deal with normally. And that has to be the case, because I think it's a combination of let's make a lot of money because the Americans are so caught up in their drugs. And whether it's something as poisonous as fentanyl, or even yesterday in preparing for this interview with you, I was listening to a podcast of a gentleman who lives up in Maine. He's up in the New England area. And he was talking about how the Chinese are, they have anywhere between 250 to 500 homes just in Maine alone, to where they've bought those homes, and inside the homes, they're growing marijuana and then lacing that marijuana with God knows what. And so they're in the drug business, both, to drug the kids and to make money off it. They're in the education, and they are in politics, as we have just described here. The other thing that they're doing as well, Jennifer, and I don't know how much you know about this or not, but they are manipulating everything they possibly can by means of tapping into, whether it's through AI or through hacking or whatever, tapping into our systems. They're stealing our IP from, our intellectual property from businesses. They're constantly trying to get their claws on everything we've got. Even in the Pentagon. I mean, I have friends who have been in the military and have been in the Pentagon, and they say that there isn't a day that goes by to where we are not getting hacked by the Chinese. They're trying to come in there all the time. And then when you add the one other thing that binds it all together, whether you are trying to indoctrinate your youth, whether you are trying to tap into systems, you then take advantage by getting into everybody's information. And how do you get into everybody's information? Instead of trying to hack in, they give it to us. They'll give it to us. Let's create TikTok. We can't get into Joe Blow's computer system, but we sure can track Joe Blow, where he has his bank account, where he's doing his shopping, how often he's looking in on porn, how often he's doing this, how we do it. We're going to get everything we need to know about Joe Blow because he's using TikTok. They have taken the wagons, Jennifer, and they have surrounded the United States from every single last standpoint, even the military. Our military, our Navy has continued to delete itself. We've got ships that cannot get parts because the ships are so old and the parts aren't manufactured anymore. Meanwhile, you go and you take a look at the Chinese Navy, and they're building brand new ships. They're making islands in the middle of the sea. I mean, China is doing everything they possibly can to have world dominance, and they are using the US dollar to do it, as we are 15% of their exports. We are buying things from them. I mean, no matter what you flip over in your house, it's going to say made in China. And I've never understood why we needed to do this. It seems like we're almost just digging our own hole. And I assume that is one of the reasons why you have not only written your book, but that you have your, Inconvenient Truth. I mean, am I describing what it is that the CCP is doing here to the United States? Did I leave anything out?
Yes, I think you are very, very comprehensive. Yes, I think let me add, they are buying over the mainstream media to spread their ideas and to target anybody they want to target. They are buying over Hollywood or movie companies. I think it's from all the front, and even our legal system is now taking advantage. If they want to target somebody, they have the money. They can file endless lawsuit against you to drag you into trouble, to break you, to bankrupt you. That's what they do. I actually talk about a case where there's an American man who has run his business in China for maybe 15 years or whatever. And suddenly one day he moved back to the United States. He registered a so-called environment protection group. And he does nothing but to file endless lawsuit against Shenyun Performing Arts, which is a performing arts group founded by Falun Gong to promote traditional Chinese culture. And their slogan is China before communism. So because the CCP doesn't actually headed Falun Gong and the Shenyun group it funded, it had this guy to file an endless lawsuit against Shenyun Performing Arts using environmental protection, some kind of excuse. So even our legal system are now being taken advantage for them to target anybody. They have the money from the CCP. They can create trouble for you. If they sue you, you've got to hire a lawyer. You have to spend the money, and you have to spend the energy, the time. So you have less time to focus on what you need to do, and they could even bankrupt you. So even our legal system, our education system, of media, our film industry, and even our sports industry, because of Chinese market, right? I think in the Hong Kong protest movement a while ago, they even intimidate our, I think, what's the best basketball team? NBA, what?
The NBA,
Yeah,
NBA,
they even try to silence one of their players for supporting Hong Kong. So they become very aggressive and arrogant. And the sad thing is there are so many politicians who willingly being bought over by the CCP and who work with them, who work for them, and become their friends or even their agent. And so it's so many so-called Honda huggers, or in all these years, have I think made so many policies that allow the CCP to take advantage of us, like they are using US dollars to do all this damage.
I mean, Jennifer, if you think about it, it is the perfect plan. They're getting us from every single last position, as you just said. And I mean, you talked about the politicians and how it is that they, are infiltrating our politics. I mean, I don't think there's a better example of that than Anthony Fauci and what took place with COVID-19. I mean, Anthony Fauci had given money, uh, to support what was going on over there in the Wuhan lab,
Yeah.
and will lie about it until he's finally caught. And you sit there and you say to yourself, like, what the hell's going on? And I think the Chinese are smart enough to realize the fact that the American politician and that many Americans will sell out for the sake of money. I'm watching it happen right now, Jennifer, with AI. And you see how all of these companies here in the United States are creating a monster that they know is ultimately going to gobble us up. And the reason why they do it is because it's very hard to say no to $100 billion worth of stock options, right? And so the Chinese use that same sort of thing. We know that if we dangle the carrot of money and power in front of the United States, and we dangle it in front of politicians, we can do almost anything we want with no limits. And I think COVID-19 proved how far the Chinese will go to do whatever it is that they want to do to dominate almost everything and everybody that there is to dominate. And so we still don't learn our lessons because COVID is now long gone. But look what's happening. If you go into your CVS today, if you go into your Walgreens today, almost every single last prescription that you get or anything from over the counter is going to wind up tying back to the Chinese, manufacturing in Chinese. Why is it that we can't make Tylenol? Why is it that we can't make whatever it is that we're buying from Walgreens? We have just outsourced everything, manufacturing of everything. Now look what's happening with Xi Jinping and what he's talking about with the rare earth material. He's, now you can't buy any rare earth and trade it somewhere else in anything you do unless you get Xi Jinping to agree. I mean, the United States used to create its own rare earth material, but through all the liberal craziness of environmental this and environmental that and trying to get things for cheaper, we wound up giving it over to China. Another great story that I've just always used to shake my head on, plastics. Here in the United States, we've got so much trash. We just create so much trash here in the United States. And so we didn't know, what do we do? How do we get rid of it? How do we get it? Well, the Chinese come to us and tell us they have a way of getting rid of the plastics. Oh, okay. So what winds up happening? We wound up paying the Chinese to take our garbage to get rid of it. We think we're going to believe the CCP that they are using whatever it is that they're using to get rid of the plastics. We couldn't figure it out here in the United States, but somehow China did. And meanwhile, what were they doing? They were taking our trash, pretending like they were getting rid of it environmentally smart, and they were dumping it into the ocean. I mean, how many times do we got to continue to do business and do things with the Chinese until we realize the fact that they are just stabbing us, not only in the back, they're stabbing us in the face, and we're allowing it to happen. I mean, when you see the things that are going on right now, Jennifer, between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, do you think that Xi Jinping is just trying to buy his time with Trump until he's gone, and then he's going to say, okay, the next guy that comes in, I'm going to just walk over him? Is he trying to just buy time with Trump, or does he actually think that he can take Trump as well?
I think it already happened in Trump's first term. They signed an agreement, they've never executed it, then Trump was gone, right? So they already did it once. So why can't they do it twice? But in terms of China's situation, I think maybe there is some kind of different situation in China now. I do believe there is a power struggling happening within the CCP right now, and maybe sometimes she was in charge, sometimes like anti-Xi was in charge. So you see different messages, different policies coming up. So I think right now they are in a very internal, you can say, mess. They are trying to figure out what to do with their internal power struggle. But overall, I think they've already realized um, their economy is in big trouble. So the next step, I think they might bring China, they might start a war somewhere to bring the state in an emergency status so they can close down China entirely. They can freeze people's bank accounts. They can try to, I think, go over this kind of crisis, financial, economic crisis, social crisis, by bringing the state in an emergency status or in a North Korea status. So we must be very, very careful about what CCP is going to do next, because if somebody is cornered, somebody is going to realize that he's going to collapse, he could go into any length of craziness to create trouble just to survive. So it is a very, very dangerous regime. We must be very, very careful.
You know, picking up on what you just said there, if you take a look at what China has been doing, aside from the obvious stuff, trade deals and things of that nature, and think about how it is that they're planning. First of all, at any given moment, they could attack Taiwan. And I don't know if people understand how important Taiwan is at this point right now to the communications, to chips, to everything. I mean, we live in a digital world at this point. I mean, imagine what it's like not to have your phone for 2 days. People go freaking, right? Well, you know, without Taiwan and all the semiconductors, we're going to have a problem, a big problem. Chinese leadership knows this. At the same time, as they also understand that if you take away the United States and you take away China, the next big guy with muscles, especially from a nuclear standpoint, is Russia. So what do? They make best friends with Russia. They're buying Russian oil. They're keeping Russia going, right? Then, of course, you've got the crazies over there in North Korea. And then you've got Iran. So what China has been doing is they're thinking the long game. Goes back to the same thing, whether you're online at Starbucks or whether you're at line thinking about how it is you're going to survive long term. They understand, the Chinese understand that long term, not only they could get us from within, but if they have the alliances around the world with the people who either hate the United States or who have enough strength to be able to battle us, that they could eventually dominate. And I do believe that they look at somebody like Trump and they are somewhat intimidated by him. And I think the reason why they're intimidated by him is because they realize that Trump has nothing to lose. You can't buy him. He's later in life. He's trying to make a legacy for himself. He doesn't give a rat's ass. He's going to come at you. And so all the Chinese have to do is they just got to withstand these next 2-3 years. And that's if Trump sticks around. I'm always nervous that they try to take him out. But assuming he's protected, I think once Trump is gone, even somebody like J.D. Vance, I mean, J.D. Vance, I like him a lot. I like what he stands for, but he doesn't have the world experience that Trump does. He's still in his 40s. I mean, a man in his 40s versus a man in his 70s is a far different thing just in terms of wisdom and the way that you understand how the world works. And so I get very concerned about when I see these alliances, when I say to myself, why haven't they gone into Taiwan yet? And I think they haven't gone into Taiwan yet because they still fear Trump and that they still fear that they're not strong enough yet. But each day that goes by, the Chinese get stronger and stronger and stronger. And we go back to what we said earlier. They will wait. They've been doing what you said for decades. They will wait for as long as it takes. And meanwhile, they send balloons across our country. They don't get shot down. They're buying farms to control our food supply. They are buying huge chunks of real estate. Nobody does anything about it. We just let it continue. And, one day we're going to look up and we're going to say, oh my goodness, this looks like the United States of China. With that said, I got to wind down here. It has been eye-opening talking to you. I want to go back to you personally for a second because, they are so evil over there at the CCP. And although you are now here in America, do you concern yourself that they see a, no, wait, I want to reposition this. Not only do they see you as somebody who was once there and now here and talking negatively about them and hitting the warning bell, but you also, to a certain degree, embarrass them because you got out of that prison camp and maybe they think that you tricked them and they look silly because of that. Do you ever worry about your own well-being and that they don't try to do something that would be horrific?
I think they have been trying all these years. Like, first of all my family in China were either harassed regularly by the CCP or monitored. Our phone line at my home is tapped. My mother was constantly watched and harassed. Her ID, her passport was once confiscated, and very recently, when she went to take the high speed railway, her ID card, as soon as she scanned her ID card, they said no, she couldn't even get a read, go aboard on the high speed railway because she was blacked only because she is my mother. And when my father was going to die in 2014, I wasn't allowed to go back to China, and they tried to ask me to work with them or maybe sell them some information about Falun Gong overseas. So in all these years, it was very, very tough. Since I escaped in China in 2001, now it's 24 years. I have never been able to go back to China once, even when my father was dying. He passed away in 2014. So all my family are giving a very, very hard time. And I even dare not communicate with my sisters in case they got, into trouble because they are my sisters. So it is very, very tough to try to fight back. Of course, threats and have never stopped, either online or in the real world. So I have been very careful in all these years. Like, I never easily give away my physical whereabouts to any people I don't trust, that sort of thing. But I have no choice. What I can say is, when I was in China, I can still plan on escaping China to go to Australia or America where there's freedom. I can freely practice my faith. But while I was already in America, if America falls into CCP's hands or into if America becomes like CCP's China, where do I escape? I have nowhere to escape. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm trying to alert the Americans how dangerous the CCP is. Like you said, if they are able to treat their own citizen like myself, in such a way, how could you expect them to treat you as a foreigner any better? Like here, sometimes I really don't get it. If the banks are going to issue a credit card to any individual, they are going to check your credit card history. If you default on your payment once, you may get blacklisted for the whole life. But CCP has been cheating, has been killing, has been, taking so many lives. Why don't we never check their credit card history? And we are still issuing them endless credit cards so they can borrow money and bankrupt us. So sometimes it's even really didn't. I really don't understand why we have so different standard when treating individual and a so evil regime as a whole. Why we never learn the lesson? Why we don't cherish what we have? I think and many other Chinese dissidents who escaped the persecution, we cherish the freedom of America so much, because if we lose this piece of land, we have nowhere to go.
It's amazing because of all the times that I interview people who are immigrants, it's the same thing they say every time to me. They say, I do not understand why the American people just seem to be so lackadaisical about the freedoms that you have and the monsters who are trying to take those freedoms away. And you sit here, you shake your head, and you just say to yourself, you could scream all you want, but there are just some people who are just never going to listen. At the same time, and nobody knows this better than you can't stop screaming. There's something inside you that says, I've got to keep on hitting that warning bell. Maybe I'm only making an inch at a time progress, but going forward an inch is better than going back a yard. And so I understand and I respect and I deeply appreciate what it is that you try to do on a daily basis. I mean, people who have an X account can find you like I did. Just search for Jennifer Zeng and Inconvenient Truths, and you will find her. And I check in on you almost every day, if not every other day, to see what else you have going on there. And I really appreciate you sharing your story. I didn't know it as much as I do now, and I would encourage people to buy your book. I'm going to allow you to say it again here before we go off. I just I want to say one other thing before we go here. I think the United States is at a critical moment in the sense that, yes, we've got a strong leader in Trump, but as strong as a leader as he is, I think we have a devil in Xi Jinping and a devil in the CCP. And the devil is not going to give up. And Donald J. Trump is not the king. He's going to have a short period of time here. And if we don't start thinking differently, if we don't start putting more emphasis into stopping the CCP, we are going to pay a deep price, and that price is going to be our country. To bullet point some of the things we've said here today, why aren't there ever any negative movies about China? Well, because they own Hollywood. Why is it they're able to just keep on going and buying properties in the United States, even though they're not supposed to be able to do it so easily? Because they've infiltrated our government. Why is it that the kids in colleges seem to be more stupid coming out than they were going in? Well, it's because the Chinese have their hands all over our systems, our educational systems. Why is it that we keep on having fentanyl and all these? I mean, there's a whole new drug I don't even know about. I just heard it for the first time, a JOP or something like that now that the Chinese are involved in. I mean, why do we have so many drugs? Why are we allowing the Chinese to do business with the cartels, and yet we're still buying stuff from the Chinese? It makes no sense to me. I mean, when's the day going to come when the Chinese say, you know how we get the Americans? They're buying all of our medicines. They're buying all of our over-the-counters. Let's just poison the hell out of them. And everybody's going to wind up using the Tylenol. I mean, I remember here going back, I don't know if you were around at that time, But we had a problem. We had a Tylenol scare here in the United States. It was a Tylenol scare. I mean, nobody did. I mean, if the Chinese wanted to poison everybody in this country, they can probably do it within a week's time. And we're just sleeping at the wheel. So if you had just 30 seconds to warn the person listening about what the U.S. looks like if the Chinese get control of this country, give a 30-second example of what it is.
You will not be able to say anything freely online. Your account will be banned. If you do meditation in the park, you could get arrested. And if you walk on the street and your blood type happen to match some CCP leaders, you got caught and killed. So that Xi Jinping can live for 150 years.
When you, I mean, we're in 2025, you were in that prison camp in the early 2000s. Can you still see it in your mind?
Yes.
You can.
Every single moment. That's why after so many years, when I talk about it, I still couldn't stop feeling the pain, especially when I think about how much others right now are still suffering. The persecution has been going on from 1999. It's never stopped one day, and now it's extended to the United States. Like I said, the CCP has utilized the legal system and the so-called mainstream media here. They somehow get the New York Times to publish over 10 articles against our group since I think 2023, and paint us in such a negative light. Even now, we could be fear that we could got persecuted in America too because of this public opinion, because of this endless legal affairs. So that really, I never expected this persecution could extend to the U.S. soil. That's one example of how deeply this society is infiltrated and took advantage by the CCP.
Jennifer Zeng, I thank you for giving me your time today. And I think your story is amazing. I will buy your book. The name of your book one more time?
Witnessing History, One Woman's Fight for Freedom and Falun Gong by Jennifer Zeng.
It's on Amazon?
Yes. And on my publisher's website, Alien Nawan in Australia, you can, I think, visit my website, jenniferzengblog.com, and you can get a link of the book from there.
Jennifer, I want to thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll have a reason to talk again sometime in the near future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that's it for us. I appreciate Jennifer Zeng's story. I mean, I could have just kept the whole hour about that prison camp, the labor camp, but I was starting to well up, and I could see that she was getting upset as well. And, you know, sometimes when you're doing this job, you don't know how long to continue or when to turn it off. And I mean, if I could do it again, I might have just asked more questions about it, but I didn't want to, I didn't want her to get too upset. I don't know if either one of us was planning that when we came in here. But the big warning here is that China is a bigger monster than any of us want to really admit to, including Donald Trump. And if I were the president of the United States, I would go tough love. You want to have a trade deal? Here's the deal. There's no more trade. I would cut China off completely. If we don't start making our own materials, whether it's the over-the-counter prescription, non-prescription drug or the prescription drugs, if we don't start doing, our own mining for rare earth materials, whatever it is, we don't start taking back over control, the CCP is going to control us if they haven't already started that process. Until the next time, may God bless you, your family, President Trump, Jennifer Zeng, and the United States of America. We'll talk to you soon.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and Team DML.